This is the 2020 Cannondale Systemsix. If you saw my previous video, we showed you the build. Now we're going to get into some of the details. Now Cannondale claims this bike as the fastest aero bike ever made by Cannondale. It gives you some amazing gains when it comes to the aero tunnel testing, but in the sport where you see a lot of extremes and pendulum swinging between aero bikes and lightweight, this bike is definitely in the aero market. The frame is specifically optimized to incorporate the Knot cockpit, which is its integrated handlebar and stem. It looks as if it's one piece, but it's actually two different pieces where you can adjust the handlebars up and down, and then you can cut the steerer tube still as you wish, leaving some spacers. But all the cables for the brakes go inside the frame, and it's actually pretty user-friendly to set up. The fork itself is extremely aero, and it uses a through axle for front and rear. The seat post is also integrated with the Knot system, but it's something that is an aero tube shape, and then on the back of that saddle, it has a cool Cannondale logo, which actually doubles as a reflective mirror. Now let's talk some of the numbers. First thing that you'll notice on this bike is that it's fast. It is not light. It's 18.3 pounds, but it is extremely fast on the flats, downhills, and even on some slight inclines. In fact, Cannondale says that you get aero advantage up 2 grades, as much as 6% gradient. Now, if we look at the components, we're using SRAM red axis Etap 12-speed, and the crankset is a 170 millimeter crankset, and that's run with a 48 by 36 chain set and a 10/28 in the back. It's crazy the way Shimano used to work compared to how SRAM actually works with its gear ratio systems. The other thing too is the disc brakes. Both the front and rear have 160 mil rotors. Traditionally, most bikes that are road and disc brakes are 160 in the front and 140 in the back. And then also for Cannondale though, they chose to go with the 160 front and rear. This is a 54 centimeter frame, and it works well for my body. I'm about 5'10" and 3/4. Let's talk about some of the components of this. Starting with the wheels, it's Cannondale's own proprietary Hollowgram system. However, it's actually manufactured by DT Swiss. It's a DT Swiss internal hub branded as Hollowgram. And then the width is super wide at about 31 millimeters, which if you put a 23 millimeter tire on it, which is stock, it inflates up to 26 millimeters. So when you're looking at it, you see the frame of the tire be narrower than the width of the rim. And I know that's really weird, especially if you're hitting hard corners at 35 miles an hour. But again, if you're looking down at the tire, you'll actually see the rim width be a little bit wider than that because it's so wide. Now, I haven't tried putting 25 mil tires on it, but when I do, that'll pump up to something even wider. A couple other things that I did on my own that Cannondale didn't do is, let's talk about this head unit. I'm using a Wahoo Element head unit, but at the same time, the stock mount that is for it actually sticks out on top of the stem. I wanted something a little bit more aerodynamic, and I'm actually using a Racewear Component 3D printed mount, which actually tucks in underneath the handlebars. And once it's mounted, it makes for a really slick, really aero type of interface. And then on the cockpit itself, we went with the Supacaz super sticky bar tape. I'm a big fan of Supacaz. They come in a million different colors. And once it's put on your bars, it's really sticky. We capped it off with Skratch Labs finishing tape. And then a couple other little touches are the Pro logo saddle, which is actually a shorter snub nose saddle. More on that in a future video as we compare different types of saddles. And then we also use Enve bottle cages, which are a takeoff from my old bike. So a lot of different changes, but the biggest key changes that I've noticed in this is the two parts that you do see. One of them you do see, one of them you don't see. The one you don't see is the bottom bracket. It's actually a prototype from Kogel, and it uses a PF30A dub, which is asymmetrical. And the dub is to accommodate the SRAM crankset. Now, part of the reason why it's a prototype is they don't normally have these types of bottom brackets made specifically for Cannondale bottom bracket standards, and they ended up having to put different colored cups on the drive side and the non-drive side. The drive side uses a blue cup and the non-drive side uses a black cup, which I thought was really cool. Now, the part that you do see is their Colossus derailleur hanger, and that tooth underneath there on the bottom part of the hanger is a 19 tooth cog. It is bigger than some of the cogs on the cassette itself. Part of the reason is that the Colossus derailleur hanger uses way less friction than your stock mounts, and the reason why is because it creates such a wider area and less friction happens. Now, when we put that on, we had to disassemble and take off the stock derailleur hanger and then put that on and then tension it accordingly to accommodate SRAM red axis. But once it's on, the shifting is smooth, the chain is tensioned really, really well, and it's way less friction. And as you know, friction can sometimes be the enemy of your ride. And speaking of friction, you'll notice that the chain is pink. Now, it's there both for looks, but also for function. Our friends at Wend Wax makes Wend cycling lubricant, which is in a wax form. Our friend Ryan Dahl, who's been a previous podcast guest, has come on to talk about the benefits of waxing your chain. The fact that that adds a color is a bonus. And if you look at this colorway, it's an insane pink, dark purple, and even blue colorway that goes across the frame, down the down tube, and then also continues on. It's actually the EF team colorway paint job, and then the pink chain also adds an accent to that. So all in all, this weighs 18.3 pounds. That's without cages and without pedals, so it's completely bone stock, but obviously there's ways to get it a little bit lighter. One of the things you need to know about the bottle cages is if you take the seat tube cage off and run it as a single water bottle mount, you can actually move the mount from the down tube one down. The frame actually expands outwardly, so as you move the cage down and put a bottle in there, you'll still be more aerodynamic compared to if you had the bottle up, making room for two bottles. The cool thing about Etap is it's my first time doing it, but once you use the shifting, it's extremely intuitive. And then you only need to charge it every few thousand miles. The batteries do last. The rear battery tends to run out on the rear derailleur a little bit faster than the front derailleur, but I've always found I can just swap out the two and move the rear to the front and the front to the rear, and then that'll always get you home safe. The great thing about SRAM Access is these brake hoods. I love these brake hoods. They're actually bigger than the other brake hoods I've tried, and I think they're really well ergonomically. They actually have a little bit of texture on the top, so when you grab them, your hands are secure, especially in wet weather or damp weather. And then the levers can actually move fore aft to accommodate different hand sizes and things like that. If you have questions, reach out to me, subscribe on this video, hit a like, and let me know what you think about Aero bikes. Do you like them? Do you use the standard bike? Let me know in the comments. Until then, stay Veloworthy.